Indeed. Well, by my side now, our royal historian Kate Williams, and also with us is Robert Jobson, royal correspondent for the London Evening Standard newspaper. Good evening to you both.
Good evening.
It was meeting the Queen that was the fork in the road in Prince Philip's life, Kate, because it could have been so different. He might have been working, well, in the Royal Navy for a long time, for one thing.
Yes, Prince Philip was a great naval man. He met the Queen when he was 18. He'd met her before informally, but that was the big formal meeting when she fell in love with him. He was 18. He was top of his class at Dartmouth Naval Academy. He was on for a glittering naval future, and indeed he did have a great naval service in the Second World War. But after the Second World War, then he married the Queen in 1947. And as you say, Matt, that was a great fork in the road. He knew what he was getting into. He knew he was marrying the future Queen, and he knew thus that his life would be as a consort, as a service, and as always 2 steps behind her.
He knew it, Robert, but did he like it?
Oh, I think the Duke of Edinburgh knew exactly what he was getting into. I think George VI said, and this is a really tough gig, you know, effectively, this is going to be even harder than probably being the sovereign. But look, he's a naval man, a military man, puts duty above all things, clearly loves his wife. And I think the very fact that he was in public but 2 steps behind her doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't wear the trousers in the relationship. And certainly in terms of somebody that she could cherish and confide in, he was somebody who was always there. So in my opinion, it's the interesting part of this story now is what the Queen does. I mean, the palace just are rightly saying that she's going to carry on, there's going to be no change, she's going to be as robust as ever. But we're already living in a time when we've got effectively a dual monarchy. There's a lot of talk about William, Kate and Harry, but we must not forget that Prince Charles is certainly leading the way. He's carrying out all the effective state visits at the moment anyway.
Well, let's just pick up on that, because William, Kate and Harry are getting an awful lot of attention at the moment. The Queen, Prince Philip, always get a lot of attention. There seems to be, it's a bit quiet on the Prince Charles and Camilla front.
Yes, that's true. Certainly William and Kate and Harry seem to get all the attention. There's a lot of focus on them. There's not so much focus on Prince Charles, very little focus in comparison on, say, Princess Anne, or doing in terms of the amount of duty she does. But certainly it is Charles who is the next monarch. And this is very much part of today's announcement. It's not about the Prince's health, as Simon was saying. He's in fine health. But it is time for him to step back, not just to give him a well-deserved rest at the age of 96, but also the fact that it gives the public an introduction to the fact that there will be a change of monarchy at some point, and Charles will be king, and it is going to be easier for that kind of transition to occur.
Absolutely.
if we have already seen him doing a lot of the royal duties.
I mean, I've been on the last 2 major trips with the Prince of Wales all around Europe, where he was really used by the government to promote our position post-Brexit, all through the middle of the Persian Gulf, where he was really deeply respected by the royal families there, and he's doing a great job in terms of drumming up business and respect and links with those nations, and therefore he is playing a crucial role. And the fact that he has been doing that we have a sort of dual system. In fact, the Queen's Private Secretary, Sir Christopher Guy, got a second knighthood for his work towards a transition in monarchy. So what we've got at the moment is that happening now. My feeling, though, is will the Queen want to carry on in this method? There's no need for any abdication, as you know. There's the Regency Act of 1937 that hasn't been used. And if you read the wording on that, there's so much scope for her to... You don't have to be mad like George III, or you don't have to be physically impaired. If you could effectively just step aside.
And which other monarchs around the world have done. Look, we've talked about the very public face of the man. We'll talk about the more private side of him and the sense of humour with you in just a moment. But okay, let's talk about that honesty that, frankly, quite often he puts his foot in it. He doesn't seem to care too much about who he upsets, and he has upset a few people over the years, quite a few. But he certainly has a good sense of humour, it seems.
Certainly. Well, Prince Philip is someone who sees it as his role to lighten the atmosphere, because when people meet the Queen, they usually freeze up, they are terrified, they're sort of statues. So what he tries to do is make things lighter, make things fun, and he tries to bring in these humorous jokes, and sometimes they have been marvellous and hilarious, sometimes they've been a bit off colour, and sometimes they have proved perhaps a little bit offensive. He's a different generation, and these jokes haven't really worked at all. For example, perhaps when he once said to a student who'd been backpacking in Papua New Guinea, "I hope they didn't eat you."
Yes.
That was one. And I think there was also one saying that when a man opens the door of his car, it's either a new wife or a new car. But I think people do see him as someone who although he has been tactless, although he has engaged in gaffes, he would admit that he is rude. They see him as someone who calls a spade a spade.
Yes.
And they see him as someone who is engagingly frank and tells it like it is. So just as Martin was saying, he will be absolutely shocked about all this fuss around him. And certainly sometimes people feel that royalty don't really give them an in or tell them much, and they have a very perfect face. Well, that is what Prince Philip does not have. And I think it shows that he was royal himself and doesn't feel that reverence.
Look, he has engaged with the younger generation for decades through the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme. But Robert, you've seen over the years how he engages with different types of people, different groups of people. Why has he been so open to that, and how does he get away with it?
Well, a lot of people talked, and quite rightly, about the legacy of the Duke of Edinburgh's awards, which is great and everything, and everyone sees that. But look, I've been with him on private visits when he goes into hostels for where kids are from gangs and they're trying to rehabilitate them, and he goes in and they respect him and thought he was quite cool, and he would just be, quite open with them. I've seen him go into hostels where, you've got homeless ex-veterans, and he would say to them, how much longer are you going to be in here?
But it's not that he doesn't care.
No, he does care.
He doesn't care what they think of him. Is that what it is?
He doesn't care what you think of him at all. No, but I remember him going into an old people's home, if we still call them that. I don't know if you do. And he said, and he picked up the Zimmer frame and said, "Well, what on earth's this?" And they all laughed.
He'll never know.
He says, "I really don't know what I'm doing here. I mean, I'm older than most of you anyway."
Well, look, apparently the reception today that he was at, he was checking who had hearing aids because he wears them too, and he was having a bit of a laugh about that. Thank you so much indeed, both of you, for coming in to talk about Prince Philip.